It seems to me that this shift in The Office's storytelling really took a noticeable turn in this episode, meshing up these traditional Office bits with these larger arcs. And to be honest, it all feels kind of clunky.
Just clap through it, man.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris and I'm reviewing every episode of The Office ever, and today we are looking at Season 9's Andy's Ancestry.
It's almost unbelievable.
So let's go.
I understand nothing.
With only 20 episodes of The Office left, which by definition means technically only 20 of these Office field guides left, I'm looking to see if fans of the channel want a rewatch series on The Office or just for me to move on into the great unknown. I went into detail about this in this video or this video, whichever side I end up putting that on. And if you haven't watched that yet, but you are interested in this topic, go watch that, help me make a decision. And for now, let's start with the cold opening of Andy's Ancestry.
People would be walking up to me like, "What's up, Asian Jim?" I'd be like, "F you."
We have finally come to the Asian Jim cold opening.
Hats off to you for not seeing race.
This episode is directed by David Rogers, who is the primary video editor for The Office throughout its entire run. So for its comedic timing, I love the decision to put Pam's talking head later in the sequence.
Jim's at the dentist this morning, and Steve is an actor friend of ours.
It worked out really well. I think it was great for this cold opening, which is also doing a lot of heavy lifting to thrust us into the fantasy universe The Office has become, and at the same time ease us into a discussion about racism in America.
America's national shame.
It's funny though, I don't remember anyone loving this cold opening at the time, but it is for sure on a lot of top 10 list of cold openings for The Office. And it's probably due to that later cult status that it really confused Randall Park when people would just yell out Asian Jim at him.
I was in and out in an hour and I completely forgot about it. This car drives by and a guy yells like, "Asian Jim!" and drives off. I thought it was a hate crime.
This episode is kind of weird though. It feels like with this setup, and the crux of Andy's story being related to Michelle Obama and thus, his family owned slaves, I thought the discussion around race would have a little bit more substance in this episode, similar to Diversity Day.
If you're a racist, I will attack you with the North.
But I think it's really just kind of what you make of it. The Michelle Obama bit does later turn out to be a prank pulled by Nellie.
So he's not related to Michelle Obama? Pam, I barely know how to turn on my computer.
Nellie's story in this episode, beyond pulling one over on Andy, is attempting to get her driver's license in the good old US of A. Pam opts to help her out in this. Their time in the car is fairly inconsequential, but it does set up a dicey exchange between these two characters.
I'm sorry I'm leaving you alone for lunch.
Don't worry about it. I have a thing. A thing of soup, which I've been wanting to try.
It's like Greg really wanted there to be an affair and or divorce in this season. But because he couldn't get his way, he still dropped stuff like this in the background. And this whole thing always reads like, well, Jim's not having an affair, Pam, so you should be happy that he's just secretly starting up a business. But that doesn't really make sense, and it doesn't really work, because if the show is going to go out of its way to say, see, it's not really that big of a deal, then they have to justify why it is a big deal to Pam. And all of this is just a wild set of decisions to make for their final season. Anyway, back at the office, Andy's peacocking around the bullpen due to his newly recognized American royalty status. But the tides slowly turn on him from to
Most likely, your family were slave owners.
and you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. The Andy Bernard story. And I don't know if I've said this in a while, but the decision to prop Andy up as this endearing manager in season 8 and then to squander all of that late season 8 with all of his hem-hawing and weird decisions, only to resolve him in season 9 as a completely villainous character is...
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Spoiler, it wouldn't. So while people in the office are busy vilifying Andy's ancestry, for good reason, Dwight, who has a well-documented problematic ancestry...
My grandpa Mannheim is 103 and still puttering around down in Argentina. I tried to go visit him once, but my travel visa was protested by the Shoah Foundation.
And Aaron, who has no known ancestry, work together to teach Aaron the fictional language of
Dothraki. Dothraki is the native tongue of the nomadic, warmongering horse lords of Essos, as featured in the superb home box office series Game of Thrones.
And Kemper is bringing her A game to this bit throughout this episode.
Hey, Aaron. So, no.
It always feels odd when I've gotten into this episode in the past. I know The Office has referenced other currently running television shows.
Remember on Lost, when they met the others?
It's Amazing Race, Phyllis, okay?
Yes, I am choosing my apprentice, which is why I have modeled all my games after Survivor.
Did you see The Apprentice last night? Can you believe who Trump fired?
But this one feels kind of cringe, and maybe it's just my brain having a hard time with these two series overlapping, like the timeline doesn't make sense or something. And though I'll probably lose people for what I'm about to say, I have never watched a single episode of Game of Thrones.
God.
But anyway, I saw that the guy who created the language for this show did play with this with some release after this episode, so I'll leave a link there. Pause the screen if you want to read it. And speaking of that, it does turn out that Ed Helms actually does share some heritage with Michelle Obama, at least according to Genie.com, Genie.com, that ran the numbers somehow. And now I'm wondering if there's just like a graph database of every human that's ever existed and could tell me how many degrees of separation are between me and my personal hero, Don Cheadle. Until we find out some deep dark thing about him and don't have heroes.
Oh, no.
Andy then holds a conference room meeting in which he uses Nellie and Pam's made-up list of other office staff's problematic heritage.
Dwight's grandfather was
a member of the Bund, which is not technically the same thing as the Nazi Party. So...
Now, this only doesn't work because Oscar's in the room, but in a crushing set of circumstances, Andy both finds out that his family made their wealth via the slave trade, which is, I think, objectively worse than just owning slaves, and he disillusioned his number two.
You doing all right, man?
I'm done. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. Not the easiest day to be assistant regional manager.
Now, we never actually saw Daryl become assistant regional manager. The show keeps skipping over things like this, and I don't like that, but it doesn't end up mattering because he's already thinking about quitting anyway. Now, Jim talks Daryl off the cliff, trying to hype himself up about his own startup decisions in the process, to which Daryl says,
It's not real until your wife is on board.
So in comes Nellie, who suggests that the warehouse wall would be a great spot for a mural for some reason, and Jim immediately pulls Pam aside to confess to his wife about his side job.
Hey, can I talk to you for a second?
Oh, Pam, no!
Meanwhile, kind of like a disgruntled Andy reveals that the Game of Thrones language is fake, which all languages are fake. Just want to say that. Words aren't real. None of this matters. Which Aaron says this.
Wait, you didn't tell me you were teaching me a fake language.
People laughed at Klingon at first, and now you can major in it.
But Dwight did tell her it was fake.
Dothraki is the native tongue of the nomadic, warmongering horse lords of Essos, as featured in the superb home box office series Game of Thrones.
So, par for the course for how every Andy story seems to have a healthy dose of poorly thought through bits. But Aaron feeling kind of stupid now, knowing that she's still going to be a duck out of water with the Bernards, is livened up by Pete, who's clearly getting feelings for Aaron. And I buy this romance 1,000 times more than Aaron and Andy, which might have been the point the whole time, probably is what we make of it. And the episode concludes with Jim finally relieved to unburden himself from his slight second life.
You're a sports writer in Philadelphia?
Animation.
No, I want to see more of Billy Jim. I want Billy Jim.
Pam is left with the question.
I still can't believe he didn't tell me.
It's not really a question.
Which is a great time to dive into the deeper meaning.
What does a bean mean?
Someone please explain it to Cap.
Animation.
No, I want to see more of Billy Jim. I want Billy Jim.
Well. How the turntables...
Andy's Ancestry is attempting to do a few things, and it's possible that fans not accepting Catherine Tate into the ensemble that audiences had come to love in the last 9 seasons, while the strategy to get us to love and accept the character of Nellie seems to be a series of one-off stories in each episode, so that the writers could build rapport on and off screen between everyone involved. In this case, her pessimism seems to be intended to entrench Pam to defend her marriage with the security that's been earned over several good years of this relationship.
He's having an affair.
Other bad stuff could happen to us, but it won't be that.
How can you know that?
Because he just loves me too much.
Though, when they return to the office, that solid foundation she just reassured Nellie exists, and she reassured herself of, is now somewhat dashed.
I still can't believe he didn't tell me.
These dynamics are mirrored in other stories as well. The more we learn about Andy's ancestry, the worse it is. Almost to say that simply asking the question of his heritage opened a door that just couldn't be shut, which impacts him and his girlfriend, whose main quest is to learn a new skill. Playing on Nellie learning to drive.
Oh, no!
And then in the same way that Andy's opening this door to new criticism, Jim is opening the door to new criticism from Pam. But admittedly, it's all kind of clunky to me, and I do wonder if we'll see this come together in a little bit more of a cohesive way in the superfan cut of this episode. But it does leave us with one question.
I still can't believe he didn't tell me.
It's not really a question.
On one hand, I love that her take was, yeah, do your thing. Let's figure it out. Because of course that's what Pam would say. But on the other hand, I get a little brain scrambled over a lingering question. But in reality, that is human. It's a very human way of writing this story. Because sometimes, maybe driven by our insecurity or feeling silly or not wanting to appear douchey or naggy, we hold on to these questions. And they stay forever unanswered by the other person who really should be answering it. But because they're unanswered, we just kind of bury them tucked away with our own personal answer based on assumptions about us and our place with this other person. And I call these drama landmines. These little hurts based on our unanswered questions. They create assumptions, and then sometimes wrong person, wrong time steps on one of these landmines, and it creates conflict. Sometimes they go unnoticed forever. And then sometimes marriage can feel like you're doing nothing but dancing on a minefield.
Oh, okay. If I step on a mine in Scranton, Pennsylvania and die, you can have my job, okay?
That's why communication is a big deal in any relationship. Say the weird things, ask the uncomfortable questions, and then you know you have a good one when your partner answers humbly, and then y'all can work together on, not purposefully stepping on each other's landmines and maybe even diffusing a few along the way. Because at the end of the day, like most things, the question that she asks here is going to be what she makes of it. Which, my friends, if you've not caught on, is the theme of this episode. Jim made of this whole situation that, Pam's cool and this case is closed. But it's not. And Pam made of this that Jim wasn't willing to share his dreams, and she doesn't know what to make of that. The office staff make of Andy's heritage something truly villainous. The staff's opinions of Andy make him act erratic, losing his right-hand man in the process. Is both the angle at which we are looking at something and the degree at which we care about someone looking back at us is the commentary in this episode. So let's give that same scrutiny to this episode and rate this thing.
This is the worst.
All right, so right off the bat, Asian Jim is the perfect cold opening. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. It's a Jim Dwight prank minus Jim, and it just works. And chef's kiss that fans love this bit so much, even a decade later, that Randall Park and John Krasinski are still playing around with it.
And I'm John Krasinski, the director and star of the upcoming film It.
Wait, hold on, what are you doing?
I'm talking about our movie.
You're not John Krasinski.
For the episode itself, like I've said a couple times, it's kind of clunky, it's a little awkward. And the best way I can describe it is Andy's Ancestry felt like half of an episode of a comedic drama like Ted Lasso. It sets up the drama nicely, but drops out once the real dramatic tension should be felt. And then because of that, there is no weight here. Now, there are some things to love here. There's a great editing gag that I hadn't previously noted. I for sure love this setup.
Whoa. That person has really gotten him or herself into quite a predicament.
Though I did think that the punchline was a little weak.
Does anyone else think it's possible that I come from slave owners?
Whoa.
I would have rather seen this clip be used here.
He deserves this. And he said I could get in on it too. Whoa. That person has really gotten him or herself into quite a predicament.
And now I think I should have been using this in every field guide.
Woohoo! That Toby. When will he ever learn?
And Daryl's set up stuff about him trying to save time is fine, but that gig was already played out, and why waste words cold opening?
Why waste time? Say lot word when few word do trick.
And overall, we don't see much in the way of a real arc for Daryl here, which is unsatisfying and really only feels like it's intended to be a catalyst for Jim to fess up to Pam. And really, I think my biggest problem with this episode is that I believe it was a poor decision to wait until the end of this episode's runtime to have Jim suddenly, and really for no specific reason, confess all of this to Pam. Because while it acts like a cliffhanger, I would have been interested in seeing this dynamic play out throughout this episode, as it is the very next episode, from the best of my recollection, that doesn't even address any of this. Maybe it does. The pie episode?
Last week, I finally told Pam about the other job I took in Philly, and she was so incredibly cool about it. And now I just want to do something huge for her.
Maybe it's like looks, like Pam's like, ooh, I don't know. I actually think I'm going to come in a little under the average Office viewer on this one. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5.
Oh, the look on your faces.
I feel like this should have been a steak. Very meaty with all the cringe Bernard background stuff going on.
What if I said that my dad beat me and I just left out the croquet of it all?
And this reveal for Jim and Pam, but instead it just feels like cotton candy. It's exciting for a moment, but it's finished way too soon.
That's what she said.
And with nothing really to remember this by. But join me next time when we talk about Work Bus.
Shabuya, yeah, shabuya, roll call.
So that's all I have to say about this one. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thanks to all the patrons supporting the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.